Good evening. Welcome to Tech Tuesday with Shimira Williams. This is Elwin Green of Homewood Nation. I'm with you tonight with Ms. Williams. Hello, Ms. Williams.
Hey, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well, doing well. If anyone is here for the first time, Tech Tuesday is a Hangouts on Air series in which each week we discuss issues about how to make good use of technology in both our personal and our business lives. And tonight we're doing this is the second installment of this series, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, and it's called Taking Your Business Online. So we're looking at the steps that a business person who wants to go online should take prior to even like having somebody design a website for them, which so many of us think of it as being like the starting point. And we're kind of saying, no, not really. You want to get some other ducks lined up before you take on that action. So, so tonight we're looking at email, and I may owe a little bit of an apology to folks who saw the promotion that I did for it, because I said how to make the most of email, and really the question of how to make the most of email, that would be like a 6-hour seminar. Okay, tonight we're just going to be looking at some basics about setting up the email for your business, so that in a way that you won't have to go back and change everything later. So, so with that said, let's get started. When we talk about email, the first thing that will pop into a lot of people's minds is, oh, well, I can just use Yahoo or Gmail or, and perhaps some other free email provider, and and use that for my business. Let that handle all of my email through my Gmail account, for instance. So you would say, Ms. Shimira, that that's not such a great idea. Why is it?
I would say that you want your email at your own domain for multiple purposes, but the first one, it shows that you've invested in your business. You've at least taken the first step to secure your own domain, to say I'm going to actually be here and established. So, that's one thing, and it looks better to, or looks more invested to funders and people on your business card when it's at your own domain. But another reason is for owning your content or emails that are coming across your email service provider. When they are at a free email, they are owned by that email provider at the end of the day. And when they are on your own domain, they are owned by you, which allows you to archive them, store them, back them up for future references. We'll get to that.
So very good. If your business is Pam's Pizza, and your domain is going to be pamspizza.com, then you will want to have email addresses at pamspizza.com.
Yes. Yes. And typically the way you would get your email, or whoever be your email client or provider, would be your web hosting company. When you secure your domain, they typically automatically give you at least one email account, if not 5 nowadays. So when you go in and purchase your domain name, it'll probably automatically at the end tell you to set up an email account. I suggest that your first email account be an admin email account. That is the administrative email account that the highest level needs to have property rights to it, but it should not be shared with everyone because it is your master email account.
And the admin account, and let's just go ahead and say that it's admin at the domain name, whatever that is. That admin account, what types of things would you specifically use that for, as opposed to, say, some other email address?
Your admin email account should basically be your default email account for your web hosting company. Any bills or secure information that you want to come across, that you don't want access to everyone, but you want it to be a general enough email that you can access it. I know that my the web hosting account information goes to our admin account. Backup servers, email information goes to our admin account. So it's your administrative account. So anything that is going to administrate your online presence, its email should be defaulted to that one.
Okay. So besides the admin account, there are a couple of, or well, I'm going to go ahead and say admin address.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that may be easier for folks to process that we're talking about setting up email addresses. So besides the admin email address, are there other specific addresses or specific emails that people should establish for their business as they prepare to set up their domain or their website?
Well, before we leave the admin account should also be designated as your catch-all account, meaning that if anyone sends an email to that domain, it'll automatically drop into that account. So your name's Elwin. If someone spells it with an M instead of an N at your domain, it would still make it to the admin account so that you could catch even emails that were indirectly sent to your domain.
Ah, okay.
That's always good to do on your admin account or whatever administrative account you are going to establish for your domain email. But I also suggest that you set up an info account. An info account is for your social media and other newsletters that you would like to get for your organization that you might not necessarily mind if someone else has access to, like an intern or an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to capture all that information in one space without designating it to a designated employee, because nobody works for a company forever. But
Right.
the info account can live on forever. And I suggest you also change the password for that pretty frequently.
Okay. So the admin account is primarily just kind of for the business end of the thing itself, and communicating with your web host and administering your overall online presence. The info account is basically kind of to that is a way for consumers or customers to reach you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because most companies have an info account, and so when people may not know how to spell your name or know your name, they'll type in info at whatever your company domain name is, thinking everybody has an info account, or it will automatically default to it. So I always recommend that people set up an info account. It's also a nice way if you are on social media and you want to give out your company's email address. You might not want to give out your personal direct email address. You may say, send us an email to the info account, and that way you can forward the info account email to the designated person in the office without giving out their personal email address. So if someone on Twitter asks me for my email address, I usually say info@productivityllc.com.
Gotcha. So you mentioned using that account and like being able to forward information to specific employees. Assuming, let's say you have 5 employees, in your company. Each person might have their own individual email account, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So should there be, are there any rules that we should have in our minds when we're thinking about setting up accounts for individual employees?
Yes. Before you decide to establish accounts for individual employees, you should establish your naming convention, whether it's going to be your last name at the domain name or your first the first letter of your first name and your last name, or 3 character, your first initial for each one of your names and a number, but set it up to be exactly the same for every staff member. So if you have John Smith, that's what you're going to do. You're going to do J Smith, or you're going to do John Dot Smith, or you're going to do JS01. Set that convention standard. Also think of common names. Susan is a common name, so you may not want to go S. Smith, because that could be Shimira Smith, Susan Smith, or Susan Dot Smith. There could be 3 Susan Dot Smiths in your office over time. And I definitely think of that because I've worked in family businesses, and so when you have a senior and a junior, your email doesn't necessarily always work out like that. So when you are plan for longevity, so if you know that there are more than one person in your office with the same initials, you probably don't want to go with an initial format. You want to go with a complete naming convention. At Productivity, I use I think it's the first initial of my first name, my middle initial, and my last name. Another company, I just use my first name.
Okay. Then you said that you should plan for longevity when setting up your naming conventions. And what also comes to my mind is planning for growth, right? So you may have only 2 or 3 employees. It may even be just yourself. But if you're like a lot of entrepreneurs, your ultimate dream is to employ hundreds of people, right? And to build a $1 billion company or something. And you want to be able to maintain the same naming convention as you're growing. So whatever that is, you should set it up so that it can grow with you. And I'll just mention that in my own case, on one of my domains, my email address is exg01. And I set it up that way because I'm anticipating a day when I might have an employee named, I don't know, Edward Grieg, okay? And he has the same first and last initials as me, but he might have a different middle initial. And there might be somebody else who has the same 3 initials, but they could be EXG02 or EXG03. So that's the way that I set it up in that one instance, thinking in terms of growth. So you want to add to that at all, Ms. Williams? Or?
No, in the notes I'm actually giving examples of what your domain email address can look like.
Okay.
Jane Sally Doe can be JS Doe or Jane.Doe, or so those are just some examples. But before you actually start establishing email accounts for employees, make a decision. And once you've made that decision, from there on, you need to stick by that decision. And if there is a case where there's a numbering issue that needs to come into place, maybe you got 2 Susan Smiths and you didn't technically set a number, the standard convention is just adding a number to the end or using that person's middle name to distinguish them.
Okay.
Because each email account must be unique.
Right. Otherwise, you have people sharing emails.
Right. I just needed to make that statement very clear that each email account must be unique.
Okay. Okay. We referred a little earlier to social media, and I know that some businesses actually establish a separate email account altogether, or a separate email address, I'll say, for an employee to use in handling social media. And it may even be different employees that have access to this one specific email address. What do you think about that practice? Is that something that you would recommend, or that folks should try to keep away from? What do you think?
I personally recommend only one person to one email account, but if it's going to be a social media account that you are going to allow multiple people to use, make it be the info account or create a social account just for that purpose. You know, email still has some privacy issues that you want to be able to handle with that. So you don't want everybody in the account, but you, at prime example is Facebook kind of forces you to provide an email address in order to set up a page.
Right.
And that should be at the company's info account or social account. It should not be at that designated employee's account, because if that employee leaves the company, it's kind of, that social media would be attached to their account.
So someone who has left the company entirely would still have access to or even control over their company's Facebook page.
They could, if they have their email attached to the page instead of the company's email.
And if they left the company on bad terms?
I have seen cases that the person has used their personal email account and attached it to them, and they left on bad terms, and they just held the page. They are still the administrator of the page. They have no purpose to administrate this page any longer, but they put it on their account, and so they can still control it. I will say that Facebook will not intervene if the person is using their own personal account. So if they are using their @Gmail account, the Facebook will not intervene. However, if you can prove it was an employee at your own domain, you can get Facebook to release the page from their account. So that's another reason why I would suggest you use the company domain email.
And that sounds like basically kind of a nightmare scenario, because if someone did leave a company on bad terms, they could actually just do a lot of damage if they have control over the company's Facebook page, right? I mean,
yes,
a whole movie.
Post whatever they would like.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely, if there wasn't a second admin person listed on the page, yeah, they have the right to do whatever they want. So before you go down that road, you make sure it's at your own domain. Even if it's an employee account at your own domain, because it's your domain, you actually have a legal precedence to say that's our page because it's legally attached to our domain. We own that domain. We've verified it and things like that.
All right. So we want to be sure to have an admin email address for your business, and we want to be sure to have an info email address for your business.
Yes.
And possibly a third account specifically for handling social media, whatever that email address, whatever name you use for that email address, and then separate employee accounts or separate email addresses for each employee, and being careful before creating those to think through your naming convention so that you can be consistent in assigning names for employee email addresses. Is that about covered in terms of how to structure the email kind of on starting out?
That does. The only thing else I would say is if you feel like you don't have enough accounts, but you want to segment these emails like that, so maybe there's just you're starting entrepreneur and you don't necessarily need 3 accounts, but you want to establish 3 different email addresses. You can use a feature called Alias.
Okay.
And I will share my screen to show you what one of my aliases look like. There we go. had a lot of stuff open. So my aliases are all right here. I have about 7 of them onto one account.
Okay.
And it allows me to segment my email, but still all get my email at the same address. So that's an easy way to do it if you are limited by the number of email user accounts you actually have.
So an alias is a way of having multiple email addresses, but they all go to one account.
Yes.
Am I getting that right? Okay. Okay. All right. In handling any part of information, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that we're always talking about really handling information, and it's all on hard drives, on somebody's computer somewhere, and one of the primary rules of living in a digital age that a lot of people simply don't follow, even though everybody knows you should, but most people most of the time don't, is backing up your information, right?
Yes, that's my favorite one, backing up email.
Yeah. Um, and email in particular, I'll speak for myself. I think of email as something that is out there, right, on the email provider's servers, right? So, and I'll use Gmail as an example. I let Google just handle all of the backing up, if you will, of my email, right? Um,
Did you tell Google to back up your email yet?
right, exactly. It's just this assumption that they're going to magically do it, and and everything is fine. But if there were a circumstance where, for reason, let's see, I'm not going to say like Google collapses, but let's just say that Google decides for some reason to delete my account, okay? Um, and I don't have any other record of any of my emails for the past 5 years, then I'm kind of screwed, right?
You are, unless you have archived already.
Okay.
So, you can archive your email, which allows you to create a backup of your email accounts that you can actually place on an external hard drive. So even if your own system crashes, you have a backup of them. In our time, email has become so prevalent that it is a legal binding document in some cases that you might need to take it to court if you're a business owner. Maybe some of the communication you had via email is going to be your proof. So you definitely need to have a copy of your email, whether you are using your email over your phone or your computer or your desktop. You need a copy or backing up your email. I recommend monthly. Some people wait every 6 months. Some people wait annually. Some people never archive. But
right.
You definitely should archive your email. It is not, and especially if it's on your own domain, there is no one automatically creating a fake backup for you on your server. So, that being said, I actually do have 2 videos about how to archive. I'll show the one on Gmail because that's probably the most prevalent one that everybody would use.
Okay.
And the other one is out there, and they're less than a minute long.
All right, let's take a look.
Let's see. All right.
If you use Gmail or Google Apps, archiving your inbox is simple. Simply select all of your email and hit the folder icon that says archive, and it will archive all your email instantaneously. If you would like to retrieve your mail that you've archived, simply hit the drop down box, go to all mail, and you'll be able to see not only your current mail, you will also be able to see any mail that has been archived.
So that makes it very easy. You should also still create a backed up hard copy on your hard drive too.
And I just want to make sure that we note that we're talking about not just archiving it, say, to your computer, because if your computer crashes, then you're still kind of up the creek. We're talking about archiving it or backing it up to like an external hard drive, a thumb drive, something.
Here's my external hard drive that I have.
All right, there you go.
It's pretty big and it's old, but it definitely works.
And the thing is that with the ever decreasing price of storage, you can get a terabyte external hard drive these days for maybe $70.
Yep.
And emails are mostly text, so you can actually get a ton of emails into less than 1 gigabyte, never mind a terabyte. So yeah, even a thumb drive, such as, I should be able to just pull one out and show it, because I have a ton of them here.
That's just a thumb drive. This one is a 2 gigabyte one, which would definitely be sufficient.
Right. Here I have a 4 gigabyte drive, and at this point you can go to Staples or Office Depot and get 8 or 16 gigabytes for like $15 or less, and just pull it out maybe once a month, plug it in, and back up your email to the thumb drive, and you're a lot safer in case of the zombie apocalypse.
And somebody's going to say, but why can't I just put it on my cloud? Because if you have no internet access at that time in the apocalypse, you can't get to your cloud. Right. I love my cloud. I love all of my clouds, but I also still create a real physical hard backup.
Right.
CD-ROM works. I mean, if that's how you got to go about it, go to CD-ROM if you need to.
Hey. Don't tell anybody, but I still have some floppy disks. I don't have a machine to put them in, but no, never mind.
That's the crazy thing, because I found the zip folder, the zip disk.
Zip drive.
Yes, the drive. Like, who remembers that little?
Wow. Okay.
But we digress. Sorry.
Yes. And we are going to start wrapping up. But just to summarize, number one, when you are preparing to go online, we spoke last week about creating your own domain, and most hosting providers will automatically allow you to have as many as 5 email addresses, and you want to begin structuring those email addresses. You want an admin email address, you want an info email address, and possibly a separate email address for handling social media.
Yeah.
And then you want to establish a naming convention for your employee email addresses. You can make use of aliases if you want to have multiple email addresses come to one place. And finally, backup, 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 archive, archive, archive. Um, did I get everything there, Ms. Williams?
You did. You did. Let's not forget as we wrap up that you can get your email in multiple fashions. You can do web-based mail, which means you open up an internet browser and you access your email, which is typically how you access your Gmail or Google apps. Or if you are GoDaddy, that's how you can access their email too, via webmail or web-based mail, which just about everyone offers nowadays. Also, you can use a email client, which is stuff like Microsoft Outlook or Mail or what else? Outlook Express. I think on my iPad it's just called Mail. So whoever your email comes through, all those things that we've talked about still remain the same.
Right.
No matter where you get your email at, you still need to back up, have the same naming conventions, and definitely have an admin account, if no other account, that does a catch-all of all your emails.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Williams. I think we've given folks enough to help them get started in putting together an email structure, if you will, that makes sense for them. And we invite everyone to join us again next week when we will be taking a look at, I have my list of programs and I don't know what I did with it. Well, you know what? The announcement for tonight's broadcast actually lists the entire schedule that we're planning. So take a look at that, and you'll see what we're planning to do next week. In the meantime, thanks for joining us here for Tech Tuesday, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Okay.